In my opinion, BAMA is one of the strongest League starters in this entire patch. Not only did my old versions not get touched in the patch notes, thank God at least one of my builds survived, but this particular version is by far the strongest version of BAMA that I've ever made a build guide on. Now, the reason it's stronger actually doesn't really have anything to do with this patch. It's mostly because of the things that happened last patch. For example, the new buffed bases with really high armor and evasion, combine that with the new high HP rolls, and of course the biggest defense in the entire game now, endurance charges. With these new layers of defense, it allows us to go for more damage by dropping things like Devouring Diadem, Fourth Vow, or Energized Armor, and instead, we go the damage route. Depending on if you go Guardian or Necro, you'll be using an Ancient Skull or a Perquils Toe. Regardless of whichever one you pick, you'll be gaining somewhere between 5 or 15 million damage. But here's the thing, no matter what you pick, you'll still be tankier than the last version of BAMA that I made a build guide on. Now, 100%, if you're new to PoE or you just never played BAMA before, everything I said was just complete trash and I may as well have been speaking a different language. Don't worry, later on I will take my time and properly explain every detail about BAMA just so we're on the same page. But for the veteran PoE gamers, I know what you want. You want to know, is build good? Is it bad? What can it do? What can't it do? Right? Alright, I gotcha. To summarize hours and hours of PoEing, the only weakness BAMA has left is that it's a transfigured gem. So obviously on League Start, you either have to farm normal lab, or ideally just buy the gem from somebody as you're leveling. Keep in mind, transfigured mirror arrow or blink arrow are one of the most common transfigured gems, so it's really not that hard to get. At worst, you'll be paying 1 or 2 chaos on League Start, depending on how fast you're leveling. And that's really it. That's pretty much the only weakness BAMA has now. Now, like I said before, you can play Guardian or Necro. I do recommend Guardian now. I think it's head and shoulders better than Necro, but I'll explain that later. But in terms of what can the build do and what can't it do, well, it can blast maps, can easily do Sanctum farming, and of course, it can do T17s and it can do Ubers with the endgame gear. It was already one of the better League starters, but with last patch giving us more defense and, well, all the other builds getting deleted, BAMA is easily my choice as a League starter for 3.26. Okay, so hopefully that gave you the quick answer you were looking for. So now let me explain two things. What BAMA actually even means and how BAMA actually works. First of all, BAMA stands for Blink Arrow, Mirror Arrow. Typically these are just normal movement skills, but with the transfigured version, they become active minions. These minions do something unlike any other minions in the game. They copy your bow and your quiver, and they will use it themselves. This is what makes BAMA so popular and so strong, because even though it's a minion build, it is by far the least minion build a minion build has ever minion builded. Now, the minion is capped, you can only have up to 3, but they shoot a skill called Rain of Arrows. Now here in the POB, you can see that I have it scaled up to 9 times. This is in damage padding. It's because Rain of Arrows has a unique mechanic. It's actually designed to overlap with its hits. So near the center, if you run something like Conk Effect, you can hit up to 3 times with just 1 minion. And because we have 3 of them, that means you're hitting 9 times on 1 target. The bigger the target, the easier it is to overlap. So to summarize all of that, we're combining overlapping damage with a high elemental damage bow and quiver. On top of that, obviously, all the minion damage scaling we have access to adds up to BAMA doing big damage. And that's basically the long story short of how BAMA works. Hopefully that made sense. Now the next question most people would want to know is, why Guardian or Necromancer? Now, the real answer is you can just play whatever you want. The biggest difference is that Guardian doesn't use Spectres anymore. He will only rely on Blink Arrow, Guardian's Blessing tech. I'll explain how that works and what that is later. The Necro will still be relying on Spectres, and she cannot wear an Ancient Skull Helm. She will use the Perquils Toe. The Ancient Helm would basically make their Spectres kill themselves, so she can't use it, which means she naturally has a little bit less damage, but she's still plenty tanky. Her biggest strength though is that because of her Ascendancy, she will be able to keep her Spectres and her Animate Guardian alive a lot more than the Templar version will. With that being said, the Templar version has a big damage increase from first lab, second lab, and with the new changes they'd made to his fourth lab, he actually has a viable fourth Ascendancy for once. So overall, I think Guardian is about 15% better these days, and you don't have to micromanage your Spectres, but again, feel free to play whatever you want. If you like Necro, knock yourself out. And last but not least, price. how expensive is the build? Well, aside from the BAMA gem costing you 2C, I have done multiple hardcore league starts with BAMA, and I've worn Act 8 bows until about tier 7 to tier 10 maps. BAMA just does a ridiculous amount of damage. Once you get to the end game, of course, things do start to get really expensive because you're competing with elemental damage bows for, the bow users. Just keep that in mind. But in terms of early game, mid game, you can do your 4 stones and start farming T16s with absolute just garbage gear. Now, I do want to mention, for the record, I have been doing some BAMA practice on Twitch. That's where I'm doing some experiments. I'm also planning on doing a Sanctum run with a different skill for once. So if you want to see that, you know where to go. Now, before we go over the leveling advice and gear, I want to explain 2 more mechanics about BAMA. Here we are in game, and as you can see, I have a mirror arrow version of BAMA. When I shoot it, I don't teleport. It just spawns the minion, he does damage, but then I have to, walk past him or use flame dash. Personally, if I'm playing softcore, I would prefer to use the blink arrow version. So in this scenario, let's say you ran normal lab, you got mirror arrow, but you wanted blink arrow. What you can do is go over to any vendor, put the gem in, put an alteration orb in, and it will give you the alternate version. Mirror arrow will turn into blink arrow turns into mirror arrow. Obviously, it has to be a transfigured gem. It doesn't turn it into a transfigured gem, just to clarify, and that's that. The other thing I want to explain is the Guardian's Blessing tech. Here you can see in my 6 link, I have one version of BAMA, and this is what I'm using for damage, but I also have another version where I'm using a 4 link. It's linked with Guardian's Blessing and Haste. So here's how this works. When I enter a map, I can shoot out the 4 link that has the Guardian's Blessing and Haste. I turn on Haste, and now he's granting me a screen-wide haste aura. Now here's the trick. As long as I have at least 1 copy spawned, every time I shoot the 4 link version out, he will retain the haste aura, and I will have permanent haste through every map. This works because although I'm using a transfigured version of BAMA, they don't share the same minion cap, if that makes sense. This is just a normal blink arrow, and obviously he has its own separate minion cap. And this is one of the reasons why I think Guardian's stronger, because even though he's dropping Spectres, with the addition of the Ancient Skull, plus this tech giving him a haste aura, he'll no longer have to rely on the Spectres, so you don't have to buy them anymore, and on top of that he ends up having more damage anyway. So that's kind of why I think Guardian's better now. Alright, for the leveling. Now, even though I know there's new players, I'm not going to go step by step, how to level a character. If I have time, I would like to do more or less a beginner guide, but I can't do that right now. It would take too much time. What I can do is briefly explain the leveling parts of the POB, so at least you'll understand why it's laid out like this. From level 1 to 12, you're just leveling with Magma Orb. The one thing I want to mention though is do not switch to SRS until after you kill Merville. You'll be using SRS and Infernal Legion, but Merville will just one-shot any minion, so just don't do it. You'll hate your life. As you can see in the background, I tried it. I hated my life. After that, SRS Infernal Legion will carry you all the way to normal lab, and you should have no problems downing Azaro. If you're a Guardian, from this point on, you'll end up with Sentinel of Radiance, and you can just farm normal lab, and he'll just kill everything for you. On the other hand, if you're a Witch, you'll get more defenses, but you're really going to want that BAMA gem. Alternatively, what you can do is just do 1 normal lab and try to progress. What I would recommend then is that you put up a ping. If you go to the PoE trade website and copy what I'm doing, you can set up a ping, which will make a sound when someone posts a BAMA gem. People sell these for literally gumball, like a fusing, maybe 2 fusings, an alchemy orb, just literally anything and everything. But for whatever reason, if you don't want to even bother doing that, I always have a backup plan, and that would be Firestorm. As you can see in the background, this is from my testing last league. It's plenty fast, it'll get you to level 60, and then you can obviously have enough money, switch to BAMA then. Like I said, I recommend trying to get a BAMA gem early on. It's literally one of the strongest leveling skills in the entire game, and it makes your life so much easier getting it early. For the gear, besides the uniques and the quiver and the bow, the rest is just very basic minion gear. You'll be crafting with bound fossils, harvest juice, fractures, the general normal minion stuff. The one thing I do want to mention though is you will have mana issues. I did my best at every stage of every POB to try to handle the mana. For example, I'm anointing Dreamer on pretty much every amulet early on. This should hopefully be enough, but worst case scenario, just get an enduring mana flask. It's a temporary band-aid, but it'll get the job done. Okay, listen up. This is important. Ancient Skull is a massive damage increase, but only for Guardian. Perquils Toe, you could also wear on a Guardian, but in my opinion, it's a little unnecessary because he already has so much damage. Necromancer cannot wear an Ancient Skull. The reason is because Ancient Skull has one line that it says it scales your minions off your max power charge. The line that says minions hear whispers after critting. Here's what it does. They crit, they gain 50% increased attack speed, which is genuinely insane. The downside, they'll take 20% of their life as chaos damage per second. If you're playing a Guardian, you're not going to have any Spectres, And I have a tech to make the Guardian not actually crit, so he'll be fine. If you don't have any other Spectres, Guardian is better right now. Necromancer though needs to run the AG, and she needs to run Spectres in order to make up her damage. Because of that, she can't wear the Ancient Helmet, but she will be wearing a Perquils Toe. And of course, I POB'd the tree to try to get her damage up. I think Guardian is at 34 million as of recording, and I think Necro's around 30 to 31, somewhere around there. Still competitive, but because of the Spectre difference, I do think Necro ends up a little bit worse. Now, for the record, Ancient Skull and Perquils Toe should be like 5C uniques on day 1, but there is the YouTuber tax, where if somebody makes a video and it gets a good amount of views, the price on some items may go up. Now, that should not be a problem for these 2 uniques. They're fairly common, so nobody should be able to buy them out. There should be no price fixing. I don't see it costing more than maybe 10 chaos on day 1. Key, before I go over the skill tree and stuff, I want to go over the AG's gear. It's pretty generic. Obviously, the best in slot item would be a Kingmaker. Who knows how expensive that's going to be because the Animate Guardian change where he doesn't drop it anymore. So, whew. On one hand, there might be more for sale. On the other hand, they'd probably be like 30 divines, you know, who knows. So, I'm recommending Dying Breath, Doppelganger guys, some gloves with Chaos Res, and those implicits are pretty important, and Legacy of Fury. These are definitely just the cheap but very good option for damage. And Cadigan's Crown. Like I said, with Ancient Skull, if your AG were to crit, then he would start losing health. If you go back and look at some of those clips, you'll see that my AG and my Spectre were dying. That was before I realized the Ancient Skull's downside was so bad. So that's just some insight into the testing that I've been doing. This should obviously solve the situation though, right? Never deal critical strikes. You put that on your AG. He can't crit. He just stands there, gives you damage. Thumbs up. We're good. For the skill tree, I'm not going to sit here and go over, you know, every single thing. But if you did play BAMA previously, I want to mention the changes I made. So ultimately, we are way tankier than we were before. I think we're at 2056. I think my last version was, I looked at it just a second ago. It was like 14 Fizz hit and like a 30k Ellie hit with no flasks and no Molten Shell. We are at 2056. We have no flasks on and we don't have Molten Shell on. This build is significantly tankier. To give you an idea, I think a 23k Fizz hit is enough to survive a Shaper Slam. So this guy's ballin'. The biggest change is the Endurance Charge change. Because Endurance Charges are so much better and actually worth getting, we're going for the 13-second Endurance Charge generation. So that's why we have to path a little weird to make it kind of, you know, worth it. So you take that 20%, 20%, your Endurance Charges now last 14 seconds, and obviously we'll get a charge every 13 seconds. However, when you enter a map, you will not have any Endurance Charges, and you'd have to wait, you know, a minute to get your max charges. Obviously that's dumb, so we have a plan B. Red Blade Banner. This is a garbage unique. You put it on, put your Enduring Cry in this in your weapon swap, enter the map, weapon swap, press Enduring Cry, you'll be at max charges, weapon swap back, there you go. Now you have max charges for the entire map. That's a tech I learned with Cyclone, and spoiler, another tech I'll be mentioning when I make a Cyclone guide. That'll probably be like way later down though, a couple days from now. And ultimately, Endurance Charges are just way too strong to pass up. Also, we have max res here, so it just kind of makes sense to path this way instead of going down over here and getting energized armor now. The other big change I made was dropping this movement speed. You can do this still, it will cap your suppression, but for points, this ends up being better. You still get okay HP, and freeing up those points allowed me to actually squeeze out this last endurance charge and a little bit of regen. You could drop the regen, but personally I think the regen is just kind of the only weakness we really have, so I feel like it's mandatory. And of course, because maybe you're a Sanctum farmer or you just really like damage numbers, if you wanted to, you can go ahead and put on a Perquils Toe with Whispers of Doom. That takes you to 38 mil. And if you're like, I don't need all those endurance charges, how do I get more damage? You just go over here and there you go. Now you have over 50 million damage, knock yourself out. Personally, once I hit that 25 million mark, I'm good. I don't need more. That clears the entire game for me. I'm chilling. Now, real quick, I want to go over the few items I want to craft because I think bone rings are worth a lot of money, but they're really not that bad to craft. And then obviously I'll show the bow and the quiver, and that's pretty much it. The rest of the gear is just generic fractures and essences. Now, obviously I would recommend that you get a life fracture, chaos res fracture. I wouldn't really go for the minion damage fracture or anything like that. I think just getting life or a chaos res or something like that would be fine. So the two ways to craft this, and the cheaper way in my opinion, is to go for caster. Speed's pretty expensive. So you can do a caster, and you either roll cast speed or minion at cast speed. And obviously you just hit this over and over again, and you're trying to hit minion cast speed / attack speed with minion damage, right? So Pretty straightforward. This is how I craft all of my rings. The other option you could do is use a bound fossil. It really just kind of depends on what you're looking for. If you're fine with getting minion life or minion res, or, you know, because you're running the Necromancer version, that's completely fine. I'd recommend doing this version if I was playing Necro. But like I said, I'm playing a Guardian, so I'm mostly just concerned about damage. Wow, that's pretty crazy. But yeah, that was the rings. I just wanted to mention it real quick, just to get it out of the way, because I think people overprice them, and they're really not that hard to make. So for the bow, first thing you need to look at is dex. If you have enough dex to wear an ivory bow, cool. Ivory bow is what I would recommend. The other next best option would be spine bow. It's 212 dex. No thank you, sir. Any of the other ones are good enough because you're looking for a fracture. I'm a big fracture crafter. I'm not really big on recombinator stuff yet. I'll probably learn it this league because I feel like it's going to be necessary, but otherwise I'm more of a fracture and essence spam kind of person. First things first, fear essences are completely fine to replace things like, you know, flat lightning damage. Now obviously I wouldn't do it with flat lightning damage. Lightning damage is the best, but a fear % minion damage roll is enough to replace cold or fire. So don't forget fears exist. I'm just putting it out there for, you know, whatever reason, if fears are cheaper than all these other options. Now for the bow, you're looking for a fractured lightning, fire, cold, and like I said, minion damage, but very unlikely that you'll find that one. So best case scenario, let's say you are endgame, you finally have, you know, the bow that you're looking for, and you're ready to start crafting. You have tier 1 lightning, you spent 10 divines on it, you're ready to start, you know, spamming. Just go for the next cheapest essence, which would either be fire or cold. So you go hatred, and you click this until you hit fire damage. Now, like I said, you could use a fear. If it's really, really cheap, you can go ahead and keep doing this. And yeah, tier 4, maybe that you could just craft on this and you stop there. This is already a good enough bow to do most content in the entire game. But after about 200 essences, you'll finally get a tier 2 roll or a tier 1 roll. It's pretty expensive. Like I said, at the end of the day, it's deterministic, and deterministic usually means expensive. So let's say you spent, you know, your 500 essences and you got your fire damage. Literally from here, you just multi-mod it and you're done. Prefixes cannot be changed, and then you would do minion attack and cast speed. It's slightly better than normal attack speed, but for whatever reason, let's say you have another bow or you hit attack speed, you can keep normal attack speed. It's only slightly worse than minion attack speed, at least according to POB. And take off prefixes not be changed. Take off prefixes can, wow, English. Take off prefixes cannot be changed, and put on crit chance, put on normal crit chance, and there you go. This is the exact bow in POB. I made a bow very similar to this, but I settled for tier 2 fire because, well, you know, the difference was just so marginal. Now, one thing to note, I don't know if rune crafts are still in the game. I listened to the entire Devin review. I don't know if they ever mentioned that specifically rune crafts were not in the game. They just mentioned the new runes. But there is an overpowered rune in the bow section where it makes it so the enchant is minions gain 150% increased bonuses or something like that. Well, the thing about that is that if the minion is wearing a bow that gives him an extra 150% minion damage, that works. He would just get more efficiency from minion damage, which is insane. So if that's still in the game, that is by far the best option, but I haven't heard them mention it. Just keep that in mind, that if it still exists, then BAMA is the best build in the game, and I'm not even going to debate it. Now for quivers, this one's deterministic but very simple. You want spike point, broadhead, blazing is okay, and then primal. I would go with primal if I had the choice. Now for your fracture, you're looking for any one of these three. In the order that I'd recommend, I would say attack speed, then crit multi, then crit chance, in that order, and we'll just fracture it. All right, got fracture attack speed. You use torments. I don't know why wraths and torments are different for quivers versus bows. It's always confused me, but anyway, because we have attack speed, we're guaranteeing lightning here. All we're looking for is crit multi or crit chance. Either or, doesn't matter which one. Whatever tier you're ready to settle for, or if you're wanting for perfect one, then go for tier 1. All right, so let's say this is the worst case scenario. It's filled, it has crit multi, but now you gotta get rid of the dex in order for us to finish the quiver. You annulled it, you have a chance. You annulled it, you bricked it. You annulled it, you bricked it, you annulled it. Hey, congratulations, your quiver is done, but you still need to throw maybe another 10 divines at it to finish it. Go down here, cannot roll attack modifiers, which is a suffix. You've filled the suffixes, and now you cannot annul off anything besides the cannot roll attack. So can't annul this, or annul this, which means If you exalt it, you are guaranteed to hit life and percent damage. This is tier 3, tier 2. Congratulations, this is the same if not better quiver already. Let's say you hit a low life roll and you're like, nope, I'm a hardcore player, I want better. Okay, well, the same thing I said just applies, right? So if you can only exalt bow damage and life, that means you can only annul bow damage and life, and you just go again. Oh, that sucks. We go again. Oh, and that's what sucks. Now you lost a divine. You got to put it back on and try again. Lost another divine. Try again. Lost another divine. Try again. But yeah, you get the idea. Tier 1, tier 3. There you go. Knock yourself out. Remove the cannot roll attack. Craft crit chance. Congratulations, the quiver's done. One thing to mention. They did mention there, I think they mentioned that there were veiled exalted orbs, in which case you can YOLO to try to go for a perfect quiver. Technically speaking, the best possible thing you can get is actually chance to gain frenzy charge on crit strike chance. What this would do is, because again the minion is wearing your bow and quiver, if he shoots, he crits, he'll gain the frenzy charge. So they'll immediately just gain, you know, 3 frenzy charges, which is another 4 or 5 million damage, obviously. That's pretty insane, but it's kind of a YOLO, because if you miss it, then you know your quiver's not bricked, but you're stuck with whatever you got. So just keep in mind that that might be an option. Otherwise, I'm not really too sure how to guarantee this. I don't know if there is a way to guarantee this, but someone smarter than me can probably figure it out. Okay, that should be everything. It's 3:50 a.m. and I want to upload this probably at 8 a.m. Let's see if I make it in time. The next build going up tomorrow is Facebreaker Jugs. Spoiler, while I was editing this video and Facebreaker Jug is already finished, they buffed Facebreakers. So that build just went from like 9.5 million damage to like 11 million damage. So look forward to that, because that's kind of crazy. Otherwise, have a good one. Hopefully you have a good league start. I'll catch you next time.